So we're cruising a bunch of spots right now, whether it be a corner or the top side of the humps, and looking for that real thick cabbage midsummer like this, because you got all sorts of bait, your perch fry, young of the year minnows, all that stuff, they kind of gravitate toward it. And right now, you know, we're looking at windward stuff. So yesterday we had a south wind blowing into here. That's gonna blow all sorts of bait fish into those weeds. And they're kind of gonna stay there regardless of the wind change for at least a day or so. It's good cover for them. There's all sorts of stuff for them to eat in here. So we're cruising up this, 8 to 10 feet, looking to see if we can see any schools of fish or individual big ones hanging out in those weeds. So a lot of these clear lakes like this, if you got the ability to come out at your own discretion, you can find a day that's super calm. And the best thing to do, say you don't have electronics, the best thing to do for your everyday fisherman is just to put your trolling motor down and cruise these shorelines or the tips of humps, tops of humps even, and just visually look for cabbage. A good cabbage you're going to be able to see just with a set of polarized glasses, and that gives you a good starting spot. But like today we got some ripples in the water, can't really see down too far, so what I'll do is I'll cruise each shoreline with side imaging. I'll start out shallow, 8-10 feet, and you'll just look for those weed edges on your side imaging. As soon as you find an area that looks to have thick weeds, what I'll personally do is throw down my Alltrex and my Garmin LiveScope, and I'll just cruise these areas. And as you can see, there's a lot of fish hanging out on the edges, but if you pan up close, 8-10 feet, you start seeing cabbage coming up, whether it's cabbage or coontail, 3-4 feet off bottom. And I'll just keep cruising. Right now there's a lot of small fish, whether it be perch or small walleyes, but I'll cruise until I see some of those real big stalks. Not only adding a lot of cover for those bait fish, but I think shade is a big thing too, especially on these sunny days. Clear lakes especially, you'll notice that it'll be almost just a wall of cabbage. Like you'll see it to the top of the water all the way out to 14-16 feet. Then it'll just end right there. And in those cases, I think a lot of fish stay in that thick stuff, but unless you're doing something weedless or you're, throwing something right on the edge, I think it's pretty tough to get in there to pull them out. So a lot of times I'll focus right on the edge where they can be close to deep water and they can be sitting right on that cabbage edge all at the same time. It takes just a couple flicks of the tail and they're in that giant wall where they can hide, but they can also ambush bait fish that are swimming along on the edge as well. That taller stuff, starting in about 9 feet, it gets shorter deeper you go, but it seems like the big fish like this stuff, you can see, we're running over it now, but there's a fish hanging out in there, right in that thick stuff. 2 of them, 3 of them, you can see them moving around. That's a giant right there. But it just seems like the more cover those weeds have and the greener and stuff, the cabbage, bigger leaves, the healthier it is. It seems like that's gonna hold the majority of at least your big ones. So this spot's, it's different type of weed, and it's almost just that 1 to 2 foot tall stuff right on the edge of a sand flat. Wind's pounding in here really good though. Makes a really sharp wall hitting that sand. So there's a nice transition from deep water to really, really shallow sand. Seems like these 21 to 23 inchers got so much spunk to them. Good fish. So right now, a lot of these fish haven't transitioned out to the main lake stuff yet. Years like this, we actually had a long period of time where between rain and cold nights that the water temperature didn't rise as fast as everyone thought. So we were kind of in a long limbo period or basically a long transition period. So a lot of these points and stuff that are real close to main lake humps have been good, and basically we'll find tons of fish in those weeds anywhere that it juts out or anywhere that it makes a point, or like I like to call it a bridge or a transition area out to that main lake stuff. So if you can find a good transition area leading out to some main lake stuff or a little deeper water with weeds, that seems to be the key on what I'm looking for right now. It can be a shoreline that's a couple 100 yards long or quarter mile or even longer than that with all the same features. I mean, you could have coontail and cabbage spread out the whole way, but typically what you really got to look for is, you know, is there a spot within that shoreline that's got gravel instead of sand? Or if there's thick carrowweed on bottom, are there areas within that spot that have big, you know, sand holes or sand spots where walleyes can ambush bait fish from? Anything like that. So spot on the spot is key, because you're looking for a little bit of a difference within that big spot. I mean, sure, you can pick off one or two as you go throughout the whole thing, but when you start catching one or two, you know, make sure you take into consideration where that fish came from. Was it sitting on a big sand spot where there's no cabbage? Or did you pull it from a little area that's got intermittent boulders or gravel or anything like that? So take that into consideration, put a point on your graph, buzz through it a little bit, maybe with your live or your side imaging, and really kind of start to put together where the active fish are coming from, or where the majority of fish are coming from on that spot. And that'll help you dial in, you know, your spot on the spot. And it'll actually, you know, up your odds quite a bit and help you out as far as dissecting new water, dissecting new shoreline. So we're seeing big schools right off the edge. I mean, a lot of fish right off the edge. Some nice ones too. I'll probably cast at these ones, but for the most part, I'm kind of thinking I'm gonna focus the majority of my energy looking up shallower. So we've tried a few different things on these deeper fish without too much reaction from them. So I'm just thinking they might be a little bit neutral, hanging off that edge in no man's land, where I think with the south wind yesterday and a lot of bait fish up in the weeds, I think the more active ones might be shallower. So we'll try a couple more of these, and then I think we're gonna head up into the weeds shallow and try and pick off some fish that may be feeding right now. Another feisty mid-20s, I think. Good school. Sitting there, quite a few fish. Just letting those waves work that leech up and down. It's firing up those fish quite a bit. Hard to beat slip bobbering in the waves. Give it a really nice natural action. Another gorgeous one. Just a little switch to a bigger leech, and they actually popped it and held on to it a lot better. And that's a big thing too, is try different leech sizes. Sometimes you're eating the small ones, sometimes you're eating the bigger ones better. Definitely just try your bait selection. You'll find out what works day to day. She's rowdy. You know, your weed line bites can be some of the best all year, especially those windward sides, your cabbage weeds. Wind's gonna blow in all sorts of bait fish. You're gonna find numbers of fish, and if you look hard enough in there, it's a good chance you're gonna find some of the biggest ones all year. It's a heck of a good time, and it's super productive on any of these northern Minnesota lakes.